to go ahead and put that first picture up. This was January 12th, and that is following my surgery. I still had my beard. I missed my beard very much. Unfortunately, chemo took that away from me. But that is following surgery, and, it was a successful surgery. Right before that was a pretty interesting moment, though. So doctor walks in, and, I had to get a CT scan just to see if it had spread anywhere else throughout my body. And literally like 30 minutes before I'm about to go into surgery, he kind of drops a bomb on me and says, yeah, so CT scan results just came back. Turns out, it spread to your lymph nodes, which means that after we get this surgery, you're going to have to get set up with, going to a cancer doctor and get some chemotherapy. And even then, I wasn't really aware of what I was about to walk through going through chemo. In my ignorance, I thought chemo was just something I'd go do 1, maybe 2 times, and man, within a month, I'd be back to life as I knew it, right? I had absolutely no idea just how extreme of a situation I was about to walk into. I kind of minimized all of that. And so anyway, we go through all of that, and we were blessed enough to have an opportunity to be able to go to Duke University and speak to the doctor who's really the best in the field in all of the United States, because we wanted to know that the path that I was taking for treatment was the exact plan that I should be going through and was going to give us the best result. And when we met with that doctor, that was on January 24th, I got a chance to meet with him. His name was Dr. George. Awesome guy, man. And we spent 2 hours talking with him about, my specific type of cancer and what the typical treatment plan was for that. And that's about the time that I started to really get a grasp of just how serious this was, because he started talking about how I was going to be going through 3-week cycles of BEP. That's the chemotherapy treatment that they gave me. Bleomycin, etoposide, and the P is platinum. And so that's going to be what I'm going through, and kind of explained how following that there's a pretty good chance I'll be going through a surgery to remove the lymph nodes that the cancer had spread to, and that was going to be like a 5 to 7 day inpatient surgery. And all of a sudden all I'm hearing is, wow, this is going to be not a month-long process. This is going to be a lot more intense than I thought it was going to be. And so I'm pretty shaken up at this point because reality's kind of setting in of what I'm about to be going through. And, I remember calling Michael Hunsberger as we're walking around the freezing cold at Duke University, and I'm kind of pacing back and forth, just kind of trying to take it all in and explain to Mike exactly what Dr. George had said we're about to go through. And, Mike's like, you know what, we got this, you're taken care of, we're going to go through this together, it's all going to be okay. And so we just kind of moved forward, and the really cool thing is, Dr. George gave us a few options for where we could do chemo. He's like, man, you can come out here to Duke University and do that, or I have a colleague of mine, his name is Dr. Zachariah, and he works at the University of Iowa. He and I went to college together. He and I are good friends, and I would trust him to be the one who does this, and I'll kind of call point from over here at Duke. So if you want to go that route, that's what we can do. We started to feel God at work right in the middle of that, because all of a sudden, how in the world does the best doctor in the world with my type of cancer all of a sudden have a connection to a hospital that's just right down the road from me? Like, I started to see God's hand moving in the middle of all of this, and we were encouraged. And we even saw God move more when on the plane ride home the following day, we call up to the University of Iowa, and it was kind of funny. I remember the conversation. I'm telling the scheduler that I'm trying to set up an appointment with Dr. Zachariah. She's like, yeah, we have a Dr. Zachariah here, but that's not normal. He doesn't usually just take new patients like this. I'm like, I'm just telling you, I got a referral that he's going to be accepting me. So if you could talk to somebody and see how soon I could get in. And she's like, okay, I'll look into it. Turns out Dr. Zachariah is like the lead researcher at the University of Iowa. He spends a lot of time teaching classes and is kind of a big deal over there. And for him to be overseeing my chemo was a pretty awesome thing, and something not a lot of people got a chance to experience. Once again, we're seeing God move in the middle of this, and man, giving us the best resources we could ask for. And the cool thing was, I get a call back. I think we were on a layover in Atlanta, get a call from the University of Iowa like 15 minutes after we had landed, from the University of Iowa, and they let us know, can you guys be here at 8 o'clock on Thursday morning? That's like 2 days later. we're like, done, we will be there. And we meet with them, and basically the following week after that, we're getting started on chemo, getting going right away. And the first week of chemo was really misleading, if I could just be honest with you. I remember going through my first few appointments, and man, I'm calling Dave Robinson almost every day as somebody else who's experienced cancer, and I'm like, man, this is great. I feel awesome. I'm on top of the world. I'm going to get through this. Everything's going great. And then Friday is when reality started to set in once again. Because although I had energy and although I was still eating okay and, physically I was doing well, I found out real fast on my birthday of all days, February 4th of this year, I found out why I was being isolated from everybody. Throughout the whole process, I think being isolated at our home was the hardest part. We are very much community-based people. We love our church family. We love our own family. We love our friends. We love being around people. Every night of the week, if I was doing something with people, I would be happy. So the fact that we were trapped inside of our house for like 3 months of our life was one of the hardest things that we had to go through because we were isolated from our support. We were isolated from our family. We were isolated from our people, right? And I found out why on that February 4th because naturally I'm feeling well and we're wanting to celebrate my birthday, right? I kept telling all the nursing staff that, I was having a lit party in Iowa City, getting all sorts of fun stuff pumped into me, going through chemo. And afterwards we decided that we were going to get a burger to celebrate. And we had gone to this burger shop in Iowa City right before going through chemo, and it was really good. We loved it so much. We're like, yes, let's go have a burger again. And that was a really poor choice. One of the things that they had warned us about is I'm not supposed to have like any red meat whatsoever, right? And I took one bite of that burger and I knew better. I was like, this is not done enough. Like, I probably would have eaten it had I not been going through cancer, but it was just at that point where I was like, I can risk it. I've only been going through 1 week of chemo. My white blood cells shouldn't be that low just yet. I'm just going to risk it. Turns out I got E. coli. And ended up going through a pretty hard time over that weekend because normally going through E. coli probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal, but my body literally couldn't fight off anything. My immune system was completely destroyed, and ultimately my fever had gotten up to 100.3. At 100.4 is when you need to be rushed to the emergency room because you start getting that high of a fever without white blood cells. It's a pretty dangerous situation. And going through that, I started to realize exactly how hard of a hit my body was taking in the middle of this. And so basically what those 3-week cycles consist of is the first week I'd be there Monday through Friday. Basically we'd be spending anywhere from 6 to 8 hours sitting in the infusion center. The second and third week I would just go up on Tuesdays for like a 15-minute infusion. And then after that second Tuesday infusion, we start all over and have another week-long process. And so at the end of the first cycle, even though I had that little bout with E. coli and a little slip up there, I started to go into that second one pretty confident that I got this and like everything was going to be okay. It was really fun starting our second week or our second cycle because as we went into that cycle, the Tuesday of that week happened to be 2/22/2022. Which happened to be one of the most holy Taco Tuesdays in the history of this universe, right? 2/22/2022, like we were destined to have tacos that day. And I was still feeling pretty okay at this point. And one of our main missions as we were going to the infusion center is we wanted to be carriers of joy everywhere that we went, especially in a dark place like an infusion center, where a lot of people were going through a hard time, and quite honestly, a lot of people were going through a much harder time than I was. And I wanted to carry joy with me and change the atmosphere as we were walking into that place. And on Taco Tuesday, we had the entire infusion center talking about how they're getting tacos that night. And from the nursing staff to other people getting chemo, everybody's excited about tacos. But that was like one of the last really good days for me, to be honest, because that following day on Wednesday, I started to get pretty sick, and the chemo started to catch up with me. If you want to, I got some pictures there. So that was my first day of chemo right there. That male nurse right there, his name is Matt, and he is one of the funniest people I've ever met. So they kind of trick you on your first day. They give you a room all to yourself. It's a pretty big room. You got your own private bathroom, which is a pretty big deal, right? And he walks in there, and he starts giving us a rundown on, kind of little call pad that you got. And he looks over to Natalie. He said, go ahead and push that blue button right there and see what happens. And Natalie's like reaching over to push it, and that lady nurse right there is like, no, stop. Because it's a code blue light, meaning that every nursing staff on the floor would be sprinting to our room right that second. And that nurse, Matt, man, he just had the biggest smile on his face as he knew what was about to happen when she was just an inch away from that button. So we kind of had a really good first day there. What's the next one? So the first week, we really didn't know what we were getting into going up there. So the hospital paid for us to have a hotel during those week-longs that we'd be at the hospital. And the first week, we decided to bring JoJo with us, and man, it was really fun just to have him there. Another hard thing for the rest of the couple of cycles is, man, I was spending a week away from my son, going and getting infused with chemo, and man, it was really hard just processing the fact that he knew there was something going on, and man, at 2 years old, he really doesn't understand what daddy's going through and why daddy has to go away for a week. And, to have him there that first week was a lot of fun. And, there's a lot of stories we could share from that. But he was a little bundle of joy, and he was a trooper throughout the entire process. You can just see the joy on his face, getting to ride the cart, going up to the room. Josiah is awesome, and he did real well. That is the day that I got E. coli right there. You can see I have 2 blankets on, plus a hat, plus a sweatshirt, and, I was freezing cold with a real high-grade fever. And, we were able to get through that, and what's the next one? Okay, so she's the one who actually was a big part of the Taco Tuesday, that nurse right there. She was really awesome throughout the whole process, just a really great attitude. One thing I would say is that the University of Iowa's nursing staff is incredible. They are some of the most awesome, uplifting, encouraging people. You don't see the stress that's all over them. Like, they're coming and they have joy on them every single day, and she was awesome. But right there, she's connecting to my port, which is where all the chemo would be infused to. And you can just see I'm pretty tired, because after that Taco Tuesday, the chemo really started to take over. And man, I was going through extreme exhaustion. I'd lose my appetite. I had a metallic taste in my mouth from the platinum that was being infused in my body 5 days a week. Monday and Tuesday, I would typically get a cold brewed coffee because they have an awesome little coffee shop in the hospital. But by by Wednesday, I tried to get a cold brew, and I couldn't even take a sip of it. Just the taste of water or coffee or anything was just too much for my body to take in. And man, I spent most of the days kind of asleep in my chair, if you want to go to the next one. And that was kind of what chemo looked like for most of the week, is me with a blanket sleeping in a chair, because that's about all I could do. And it was during moments like that it seemed really easy to give up. And hopelessness would come over me, especially sitting there that second week. I'm like, man, I don't just have to focus on getting through this week. I'm going to have to do this for another 5 weeks of my life. It's like, Lord, I don't think I have the strength to do this. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get through all of this. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's in moments like this where perseverance has to start taking over. But just dragging yourself to do that is really hard, right? If perseverance was easy, everybody would do it, right? But just going through the motions and getting yourself to get back up and to face it in life, it's really hard. And so it was really a godsend, and at this point in time, our women's ministry was going through a study called The Armor of God. And for you women who were going through it, I'm going to tell you right now that was a powerful study. And the really cool thing is, as my wife was going through that, I had her right beside me sharing revelations that she was getting about putting on the armor of God. And as I'm sitting here facing this battle, I needed to put on the armor of God every day. And here's my wife sitting right by my side, praying the armor of God over me, helping me to find strength in the Lord in the middle of a hard time, trying to find strength and really stepping up in a powerful spiritual way to lead and direct our family when I didn't even have the strength to open my eyes. It was amazing to have a praying woman next to me throughout that process. And going through and persevering, man, I found a lot of strength in the middle of that, because my mind and my body wanted to quit, but my spirit felt strong. And we started to, really persevere as we got to Sunday. I believe it was the 27th. And Natalie kind of looked back as we were talking about this the other day as one of the more difficult days that I went through. It was a Sunday. And that Sunday morning we had got up and we watched the live stream that was going on here at Christian Life. And it was all I could do just to keep my eyes open and watch the video. And then after that, I literally spent the rest of the day in bed. No food, no water. I just went back to sleep because I didn't have any strength at all to do anything for the rest of the day. And I didn't really connect the dots until the next day. I remember getting up and Natalie's like, "You're actually going to work?" You see, I had a remote setup down in my basement so that I could work for Sheepgate while I was going through chemo, which was a godsend because I'm not really good at sitting down and doing nothing for long periods of time. I like being active. I like staying busy. I like staying productive. And man, Sheepgate blessed me with an opportunity to work remotely from my basement so I could continue to bless the ministry as I was, and still work for the ministry while I was going through chemo. And that Monday morning after, man, I'm feeling like absolute garbage. You know, I wake up and for whatever reason, I felt like I needed to get to work that day. And I didn't really feel good for most of that week. Most of that week, it was dragging myself to the basement and, doing what I could. Most of the time, I couldn't make it to 5 o'clock like I was supposed to work, but I was determined that I was going to do as much as I physically could to persevere and to continue working and doing what I could to be productive, which is so contrary to how I used to live my life. Perseverance is not something that would have defined me, back before I really met the Lord in 2013. Through life, I talk about, at the beginning of the service, I was talking about how often we get surprised by suffering and we go through hard times, and going through hard times is when a lot of people quit and they give up. And for me, I got saved when I was 6 years old. And, through the course of my life with my dad fighting alcoholism, abandoning our family, and then eventually committing suicide, there was enough that happened in my life where I fully walked away from the Lord and decided that a good God couldn't possibly allow me to go through something like this, right? And I gave up and I quit and I went on to live a totally different life. But I was not in the middle of cancer going to give up and quit like I had always done. I was going to persevere even when it was hard and even when I didn't feel like it and even when my mind wanted to do everything else and just go to sleep and wake up a few weeks later and let it all be done. I did not want to let cancer defeat me. I was going to defeat cancer no matter what it took. And I was going to persevere and be strong even when my body and my mind wanted to do anything else. And so even though it was difficult and I wasn't able to do everything to my best ability, I put my best foot forward and I did what I could to persevere. And then we get to that third week of chemo. And the third cycle of chemo. And going through this, I find is where character was built in my life. Character is something that the enemy can't take away from us. Once God has developed character in our life, it's like muscle memory. When you look at working out, right, that's something that I've done in seasons in my life. I can't say that I'm working out in any way, shape, or form at this point, but I've worked out many times, whether it was training for a marathon or whether it was being dedicated to, a weightlifting cycle and, getting into the weight room 4 days a week. I've had different seasons in life where I'd work out. And anybody who has worked out before and has experienced this, you're going to understand, man, that first week of getting back into working out is absolutely horrid, right? You go back in and you have this idea of exactly what it's going to be. You start lifting weights, and usually for me, after I do that day one, I don't show up day two, right? My body is so sore, and I'm like, I can't do this. I'm going to try again next week. And if you're anything like me, that's a big lie from the enemy, because I don't show up the next week either because I'm still sore from doing it that one day the previous week. And then I talk about working out again, 3 months later and finally get back into it. But when you work out and you stay committed and you persevere and you get through it and you continue to show up even when your muscles are sore, eventually that next week your muscles aren't as sore as they were the week before. And that third week, same story, until eventually you're working out and you're like, man, did I even do anything? My muscles aren't sore after I'm working out. And you push yourself that much harder because your muscle memory has been developed. And in life, our character is very much the same way. You see, we're all going to face different kinds of suffering and different kinds of trials, but every time we persevere and we decide to battle through and get through the trial, we find that the next time we face a trial, we're that much stronger. And the big mountain that used to be standing in front of us is now looking like a molehill, because we know that God is on our side. He has won the battle before, and he's going to win the battle again. And when that character is developed in your life, it's something that the enemy can't take away from you, because you have the muscle memory of faith. And God has given you the strength before. You're confident he's going to do it again, and you're able to face those battles even stronger than you did the last time. And that's how the third cycle of chemo was for me. I went into it remembering that second cycle real well, knowing just how much it was going to take me out, but I already knew that I had conquered it before, and so it wasn't going to scare me this time. I was fully prepared. I found that I was able to eat better. Throughout the entire week, I was able to put at least something inside my body. I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to give up. I was going to do better than I did before. I had that character developed in my life, and we got through that third cycle and ended up being done with chemo, and that was amazing. Now, the last part of Romans 5 talks about hope, and hope doesn't disappoint us, right? And we can easily put our hope in a lot of other things. You know, for me in this circumstance, I had this unrealistic expectation that the last Tuesday that I received my last chemo infusion, where's that picture at? Right there. So that's me and my grandpa. My grandpa took me up to my Tuesday chemotherapy treatments, and that was my last one. He and I had matching shirts that we'd wear every Tuesday. One of the cool things is every single time my grandpa would walk in and he'd tell the same story, because somebody would make a comment, hey, you guys wearing matching shirts? And he'd be like, of course we are. You know, we're the Blues Brothers. And he'd go on to tell everybody in the hospital how we were there on a mission from God. And so we wore those every Tuesday. We made it through. And even on the Tuesdays when I was in my week-long cycles, he would wear those every Tuesday, kind of in partnership with me and, you know, being alongside of me in that. And, you know, he's got the peace sign up because he's saying, peace out, cancer, we're done with you. We're moving on with our life. And so that was our last day of chemo. And I thought after that we'd be going in to meet with my cancer doctor the following Monday, just as we always had throughout that cycle. And my hope was that on that Monday, I would get the news that my white blood cells were back up and I could get back to life as normal. But my cancer doctor told me that, yeah, we're going to set that appointment 3 weeks from now. And it completely crushed me, right? Because I'd been sitting there inside of our house for a couple of months at this point, and in my head, I was going to be going back to work, going back to church, being back around my people, being able to go out and have dinner with my wife, and getting back to life as I knew it at this specific date. And I just found out I was going to wait basically a month longer to find out if I could go back to real life. And it crushed me. So many times we set our hope on circumstances or on things going our way. And when we get our mind to hope in things of this world, we set ourselves up to be disappointed. And the hope that Jesus has for us isn't based on our circumstances, isn't based on things going well for us, isn't based on things going our way. But God has a different hope that he wants to give to each and every one of us. That's from Hebrews, I believe chapter 6, starting in verse 13. When God made his promise to Abraham, since there was no one greater for him to swear by, he swore by himself, saying, I will surely bless you and give you many descendants. And so after waiting patiently, Abraham received what was promised. People swear by someone greater than themselves, and the oath confirms what is said and puts an end to all argument, because God wanted to make the unchanging nature of his purpose very clear to the heirs of what was promised. He confirmed it with an oath. God did this so that by two unchangeable things in which it is impossible for God to lie, we who have fled to take hold of that hope set before us may be greatly encouraged. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. It enters the inner sanctuary behind the curtain, where our forerunner Jesus has entered on our behalf. He has become a high priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. So our hope is set before us through our front runner, Jesus. A front runner back in this time describes somebody in the Israelite army who would run out in front of the rest of the army. He would be the forerunner to lead into the battle with the understanding that the rest of the army was going to be following right behind him. You see, we have a forerunner in Jesus who went to the cross, who died for our sins, was resurrected, and then ascended to the right hand of the Father. He was our front runner, running through, tearing the veil of the Holy of Holies, so that the presence of God wasn't just experienced by the high priest once a year, but so that the presence of God would be made available to all of us if we would choose to accept Jesus into our life, understanding that we also have a greater place that we are going, that isn't found in this world, that isn't here on this earth, but it is spending eternity with Jesus forever in heaven in the presence of God. That is where Jesus has gone before us, and our hope is anchored in the fact that we will be spending eternity with him. Jesus didn't come to promise that this life is going to go well for you. If that were true, then man, we would all lose hope and we would all lose faith every time we lose a loved one, every time we get a terminal illness, every time that we face financial issues, every time that things aren't necessarily going good in our relationships, every time that we find ourselves experiencing trials of any kind. If our hope was set in things going well for us, none of us would be sitting here today. You see, our hope is an anchor for our soul, and an anchor isn't typically used on calm waters. On calm waters, you don't need to set anchor down. You can just float on your boat, and you ain't going to go anywhere. An anchor is meant for when the waves start crashing around you, and you need to hold firm in the place that you are. You see, Jesus has a hope that is meant to hold us firm and keep us in place in the middle of life's hard times that get thrown at us. We have an anchor for our soul that isn't found in our own strength. It isn't found in our own ability. It isn't found in circumstances going well. It is found in the fact that we have Jesus holding on to us and carrying us through no matter what we face while we are here in this world. Doesn't matter if it's cancer. It doesn't matter if it's financial issues. It doesn't matter what you find yourself going through right now in this present moment. Jesus is holding on to you, and he is going to get you through whatever it is that you're facing. And so looking at everything that we've talked about today, I got a chance to share a little bit of my story about cancer. And I'm sitting here today, if you were to look at my blood levels right now, the blood test that they did to show where my cancer was at throughout this process, cancer isn't traceable in my body through blood tests right now. There's still a chance that I may have a surgery on June 22nd. Natalie and I will go back up to the University of Iowa to get another CAT scan. Long story short, my lymph nodes are typically 1 centimeter big. Mine grew to about 3 centimeters, and as of April 20th, they were down to 1.3 centimeters. I say all that to say I have 0.3 centimeters to go to avoid a surgery, that 5 to 7 day inpatient surgery that I'd really like to not have to face. So please continue to keep us in your prayers, because I've never had a surgery that's lasted longer than 30 minutes. I'd rather keep it that way if possible. So continue to pray with us in that. So June 22nd, we find that out. But yeah, the cancer is no longer traceable in my body, and God was able to get us through that. And I can't tell you how thankful I am, whether it was me bugging Brian Law at least once or twice a week, calling him on the phone and having long conversations, talking about everything that was going on. I'll leave him be for right now. Or whether it was, different things that we had to face throughout all of this. Having Pastor Michael there praying for me, and as well as the rest of the church. I know that many of you were laboring in prayer for us throughout that entire journey. And if it wasn't for your prayers, and if it wasn't for the hand of God moving in our life, man, I don't know where we would be. And so God was able to take care of us and walk us through that and get us to where we are today. And to kind of look at this entire message, going back to Romans 5, verses 1 through 5, man, we're all going to face different kinds of sufferings. That suffering isn't coming from God. God doesn't want any of us to suffer. It's just a reality of the fallen world that we live in today. We have an enemy who in John 10 says is here to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus said that he came that we may have life and have it abundantly. Right? So the enemy is a very real presence in our life and causes suffering for us. That ain't Jesus' heart. That's just the reality. And all of us are going to face different levels of suffering during our time here. When suffering, we have to choose to persevere. And the more that you persevere through trials, the more you're going to build character in your life so that you don't give up every time things get hard, but instead you're going to be able to rely on your muscle memory, on your strength, and you're going to be more than an overcomer no matter what you face as you continue to persevere through life. And lastly, our hope is found in Jesus, and it's not in our circumstances. I don't promise that things are going to go well for you while you're here on earth, but I can promise you if you accept Jesus into your life, your hope is secure in eternity. And man, we're going to be in a place where there's no more hurt, no more pain, no more tears, no more sorrow. And man, we'll be in the presence of the Lord forever. That's what we all can hope in. And so to conclude, I just want to pray. Jesus, we come to you now, and Lord, we choose to thank you for the trials that we all face. We choose to thank you for the sufferings that we must endure. And Lord, we thank you that we don't have to face anything on our own, for you are with us. And God, if you are for us, what can be against us? And so, Lord, right now I know that there are many people here, whether they're in the sanctuary, whether they're watching online, Lord, that are facing trials or facing suffering and are maybe losing hope. Holy Spirit, I pray right now that you would renew hope inside of every soul that is listening to this message, that our hope is not anchored in our circumstances going well for us, but yet our hope is anchored in you. And you already went before us. You already have the answer. You already have the solution. You are already working. And God, we choose to trust in you. We choose to put our faith in you. And we thank you for how much you care for us. Jesus, it's in your name we pray. Amen. All right. Thank you so much for being here today.